welcome to the latest edition of To Be Continued. This is the promotion series of interviews with classic artists, and how appropriate it is to interview you, how grateful we are to interview you on the 43rd anniversary of the release of Saturday Night Fever this past week.
Oh, okay. I really didn't know that.
That's my job.
Okay. Well, let me show you something real quick.
Please.
Not many people have this. This was sent to me from the. This is the Saturday Night Fever original.
That's the multi-platinum. How many sales? Looks like 5, 10, looks like 15 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was then. And now, of course, it's gone up.
So this is my pride and joy here.
I bet it is. And that, of course, is because of your involvement with Disco Inferno by the Trammps.
Well, Saturday Night Fever meant a lot to me because for two reasons. I kind of broke records, I would say, because I won 2 Grammys off the same album because MFSB KG, my orchestra, I won a Grammy for that. And I won a Grammy for the Trammps Disco Inferno. So I was standing there with 2 as a drummer and a singer. And that was, to me, that was like fantastic, you know? How many people get to do that from one motion picture?
That is, it's very rare indeed. So let's go back a little bit, and then we're going to go back even further. But let's talk a little bit about the Trammps. You had a number of hits. Of course, Disco Inferno is the legendary disco record. But Where the Happy People Go is another one. Body Contact Contract. You know, disco is such an important period in music. People don't realize that the period only lasted about 3 years to 5 years. But now contemporary artists like Dua Lipa, Doja Cat,
okay,
of course, Daft Punk, Nile Rodgers has returned. So disco has returned. So tell us a little bit about you being the founder of the Trammps, how that started, and then we'll move from there.
Okay, well, I have to go all the way back to the 60s. Because before the Trammps got started, Jimmy Ellis and I, the lead singer, we were singing doo-wop. We had a record out called Down by the Ocean by the Exceptions, and they can pull that up. We were singing doo-wop, and that was a hit record for us. And then I was also with a group called the Volcanoes with a record called Storm Warning back in the 60s. So they had a thing called record hops back then. It wasn't disco, they was called record hops, like Hullabaloo and back with Dick Clark. So what happened was both of my groups broke up. The Volcanoes broke up, and Jimmy Ellis and I just had stopped singing. So what I did, I went and got 2 guys from the Volcanoes, 2 brothers, Jimmy Ellis and myself, and I heard this song by the Coasters called Yakety Yak. I'm dating myself. I'm going back to the 45 days. On the flip side of the 45, there was a song called Zing with the Strings in My Heart. And it was like, dear, when you smile at me, I said, I can sing that. So I actually went into the studio to record myself. And I said, well, look, I think I put a group together because groups always do well. So I borrowed some money. At the time, I was working at Sigma Sound Studios with Gamble and Huff as a drummer. So I said, well, I'm gonna put my own group together. And because I've always had 2 careers, one as a singer and one as a drummer. I never stopped either one of them. So I went into the studio, I borrowed some money, I went into the studio, and I cut Zing with the Strings in My Heart, and Tom Moulton, a friend of mine, he mixed it for me. He helped me to mix an album. And the studio helped me to get a deal with Buddha Records. They say, he heard it. You know, because nobody would ever take a record with a bass singer singing lead. I mean, who ever heard of a bass singer singing lead except for back with White Christmas with the Drifters? So I made a deal with Buddha, and I needed a name. So I said, I want to give me a name that's so ridiculous that people will always remember this name. So I was sitting down and came up with a name like Bummy and the Bums, the Hobos. I wanted to, you know, because back then they didn't have names like that, but there was a group. So I said Trammps. Oh yeah, that's good. So I found out that there was a rock group called Supertramp. So I couldn't really use that. So I said, well, what I'll do, I'll put another M in it. Mm. So that's why there's two M's in the Trammps name now. And through the records, they sent me on the way. Zing it wasn't a tremendous big hit, but it was a hit enough to get me across doing shows over in England and things like that. So then I formed my own record company, you know, because I said, well, look, I want to do something and called Golden Fleece. And I put the Trammps on my record label. And I got Kenny Gamble and Philadelphia International to distribute it for us. So I said, well, I don't think I can carry, you know, my little label can't carry, you know, big enough. So I'll just go ahead and sign with Philadelphia International Records. So we signed with them, and we put a second album out because we left Buddha, and that's when we had Stop and Think and Where Do We Go From Here, you know, and that did well for us. I mean, this was not even talking about disco. This was like we were R&B. We really was an R&B group. But while I was in the studio recording How Melvin the Blue Notes, I also had this groove that I wanted to do, you know, and that's when you could say that they start calling it disco. I recorded Bad Luck, The Love I Lost, and I always had this groove that I wanted to use that nobody else used. It was called like the 4 on the floor. So the 4 on the floor, let me just demonstrate a little bit of it, how the disco thing was started. So, and I said, well, I listened to Motown, and Motown, see, as a drummer, I listened to Motown, I listened to Memphis, I listened to New York, I listened to California, and I learned the difference in all what the drummers was playing. And I wanted to come up with something different. So just to give you an idea, Motown was playing the 4, they would call the 4 on the floor, the heartbeat. Yes, I was in the studio with the OJs and the Blue Notes, and going back to some of my roots, I used to listen to the Motown beat, and I listened to the Memphis beat, and I wanted to come up and create something of my own. Going back in the studio when I was recording with the OJs and the Blue Notes, I wanted to kind of try to come up with a different kind of sound. So there was I used to listen to the Motown sound. I used to listen to the Memphis sound, the New York sound. Everybody has a different sound. So Philadelphia really didn't have a sound. So I wanted to try to come up with a different kind of beat that I think would make people dance. And I always like, more or less, if you notice all my recordings, I always play like a 120 speed because the disc jockeys could mix at that speed. And I knew that, so I recorded it like that. So to give you some of the difference of what the 4 floor was like, I'm going to show you how some of the other artists, some of the other, the studio drummers play in different places. So I wanted to come up with something. I said, I want the Trammps to be different. I want the Trammps to be different. And that was the same time around I was recording Bad Luck and The Love I Lost. I want to get a different kind of groove. And I know people, when they dance, they like to walk. And when you walk, you have a thing like this. You walking like that. So I said, that's the kind of thing I want to try to do. So now other people have used the bass drum like that, like Bohannon has used that on Get Ready to Dance. But to add with that, you have to have a hi-hat and the snare to go along with that. So it ain't just the bass drum. People think that, well, the 4 on the floor is just the bass drum, and that's how you get the disco beat. But it's really the hi-hat and the snare. That was the 4 on the floor. So everybody heard that and they said, oh, I can do that. So everybody started using the same thing, but that's all they knew. Oh, I'll put a bass drum in there. But that's how the 4/4 got started, with the 4 on the floor. So I put that on my group, How I'm Loving the Blue Notes and Bad Luck and Love I Lost first. Then I said, well, look, I'm gonna use this on my group. So I went into the studio and I got a deal with Atlantic Records, and I had Where the Happy People Go. This started the disco thing with the Trammps. I didn't really want to go into just being a disco group because you're limited to airplay, where you're gonna get your records played. But we had such a big following it's like we had our own market. I said, well, if we got a big following like that, then this is what I'm gonna do. I don't need to record R&B records. I'm just gonna concentrate basically on doing disco music, to make people dance, because people want to dance, have fun, get rid of their problems, pardon me, and enjoy themselves. So I went in the studio and I tried to make all the records disco. And what happened was most of the records did well. I mean, they wasn't gold. They didn't just jump gold, but they sold all over so much. They sold enough to make the group popular. So a gentleman, a keyboard player named Ron Kersey, he wrote a song called Disco Inferno, and he brought it to us. Excuse me. He brought it to us, and this was taken from the movie The Towel Inferno, where they partied up on the roof and the fire started, without the tragedy. But that was the idea of the song, Up Above My Head. And we put it out. It wasn't a big hit at first. I mean, it went well. It sold a lot of R&B records too. And we put the song, it was in Ghostbusters. It was in The Last Days of Disco. It was in quite a few other movies. But luckily, Saturday Night Fever picked it up. It was the last song to go on Saturday Night Fever. We got on there, I would say, by luck. It was the last one to come on. And my attorney.
Here it is.
Yes, that's it. That's the box, isn't it?
It's the box set.
I haven't seen that one.
And in fact, it is the last track on side 4 of the 2 vinyl set. You're correct. What a gift for you.
So when that came out, wherever the movie went, we went. I mean, we went to places that I would never in my life dream about going to. But the movie played there. I mean, we grew up in hills and mountains, some place where we had to get helicopters to go to gigs, but it was great.
These are Saturday Night Fever gum cards that they sold at the time.
Wow, never seen that.
With the original gum.
How did you find that?
I'm a collector. I'm a disco collector. That's why you're involved in this interview. I collect disco memorabilia.
That is amazing.
I have one and I'll send you one.
Okay, great.
There you go. So
Yeah,
interesting.
but
So you recorded Disco Inferno, sort of as an offshoot of the faster R&B records you were doing. This was now signed to Atlantic.
this
Sure.
is the original
Absolutely. The original artwork.
original
Sure.
layout
Yeah.
of the album for to be okay that we had to okay it for Atlantic Records.
With the platform shoe on the vinyl.
Yeah, so we had to okay all the writing. Some of the writing was bad, was was bad at first. So we had to scratch out here. So I had to scratch out there, and correct a lot of things that they had made. But I can't believe this is like 40 some years old.
Earl, do you own the name The Trammps?
What happened was that's a long story. That's the story. Do you
I
want
got
me?
time.
Okay. Uh, I put the group together back in 1972. Okay, uh, we were doing so well together as a group because I put everybody in. I even went and got Robert Upchurch. Robert Upchurch was he was a single on Philadelphia International Records. I brought his contract out. I paid for it out of my pocket and put him in the group because it was only Howard Wade, Stanley Wade, Jimmy Ellis, and myself, and I needed one more fella. So I went to Gamble. I said, "Look, I want this fella here to sing with me." He said, "Well, he's under contract because he got a record out called The Devil Made Me Do It." I said, "Well, look, I want him to come and sing with me." He said, "Well, it's X amount of dollars you have to pay for his contract." So Baker Harrison Young, which is Norman Harrison, Ronnie, my partners, we bought his contract out and I signed him with me to the group. So from 72 up to 79, we did well. We traveled all over the world. We did well. And what happened, Holland is like New York, which you probably know. I mean, Holland is wild. So they wanted us to move to the guys. You know, when you get big, there's always somebody in your ear to tell you that come with me. Look, I can do this for you. You don't need to be with Baker
Management
Harrison. Part
manager.
manager and other people that's in the industry say, look, you don't need to be with them. You don't need to be with Earl. He's only the bass singer. As long as we have Jimmy Ellis and we have you guys, we don't need the bass singer. I want you to come and sign with me in Holland, and I can do this. So 1979 is the year I got married to my beautiful wife, Sylvia. They asked me, say, look, man, we want to leave you. We want to go to Holland, and we want to. So they left me, asked me to come to Philly and sign papers of a contract and let them go. I say, I said, I'm the one that put you together. I'm the one that produced your records. I'm the one that put you where you're at.
You're saying that the guys that you put together wanted to go to Holland.
All of them, yeah.
You wanted to stay here.
Well, I figure I'm like Frank Sinatra. If you can't make it here, you can't make it nowhere.
Right.
So over there is only one market. So they moved over there. They left me, they moved over there. And the keyboard player, I don't know if his picture's on one of the albums. He's one of the only white guys that I hired in the band. He eventually figured out some kind of way to steal the name from me. So one of the mistakes that I did, I regret today, is that I used to like Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I wanted the whole group to look like a big group. So I spent money to dress the band so we would all be one and not with just 5 singers out front. And so they start calling themselves, well, we're the Trammps too. So people start believing that all these guys was the Trammps. And it was only 5 of us, but I dressed the band like that. So they went overseas and they cut some records over there and asked me would I sign a release from them so they can go on their own. And I did. I'm like this. And I've never been one to try to hold anybody back. If you have a way that you can make it, or if I can help you, I will. I didn't think it was right for them to do that. At the time when I was at the peak of our career, and they want to go on their own. So the group broke up, and which I didn't know that when you have a name, you register a name for 20 years, but you have to show every 6 years that you're using it. This I was not aware of because I never figured that, these guys, I mean, I knew these guys for years, they wasn't strangers to me that they would ever do that. So the keyboard player went down and waited till the name was abandoned. They call it abandoned if you don't say you're using it, which we were using it, but I didn't go in the street sign. So then he was able to use and get the name.
Whatever happened to them?
Well, what happened was they went overseas, drugs got you, in this business, you have to be able to know what you're about. You have to know what you're about and what you really want. Me, I'm a music person from my toes to my hair. That's all I do. I dream about and think about is music. I never do drugs. I never did drugs. I don't drink. I don't smoke. So overseas didn't do them too well. So Jimmy passed. He passed. The other two guys are in.
Jimmy, of course, he was the lead vocalist.
Yeah. But he didn't pass from drugs. He just passed. He had Alzheimer's. Yeah. And the other two guys, they're pretty bad shape. Pretty bad shape. And Robert still tries to sing, but he's not really able to sing anymore. So what I did, when they left me in '79, I went and formed I went and got the guys that's with me now. They've been with me over 30 some years. The same guys. And when they left, I went and formed another group. And I did the Oprah show. I did Wendy Williams show. I did Ricky Lake. I did all the television shows because I'm the one that promote the group, put the group together, made them what they are. So everybody knew me.
And you did that as Earl Young's Trammps, right?
Earl, yeah. Now, I couldn't use the name, so I had to use the Trammps featuring Earl Young.
Earl, how old are you?
I'm going on 81. And
funny how things happen, isn't it?
It's so funny, but I look at life like this. I mean, this is something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. I mean, some people sing or play because they like it, or they go to school to learn it. To me, I was born, I think, to do this because I never had any kind of drum teaching. I taught myself. I went and got when I was like 15, 16. I was raised in two foster. I never seen my mother and father. I was raised in foster homes, 2 foster homes, and I used to belong to I joined a drum and bugle corps, and I got attracted to drum for some reason. So I never had a drum set. So what I did, I went and got 4 phone books, which they don't use phone books anymore, and put tape on them, 2 Maxwell House coffee cans. I'm in the foster home, so I had no money. So I used these 4 chairs and these phone books, and this is how I learned to play. The coffee cans with my cymbals, and these 4 chairs, and I played. Then eventually, I was able to go to the pawn shop and get a mix match set of drums, or Ludwig's, and stuff one inside the other one. Didn't have no heads. Got on the bus and start doing little shows and bars. Where people They don't care what you play. You just there. You just there playing. You might get a chicken bone might come past you. You know, you don't know. So they call it the chilling circuit. They say, "Oh, play old man Joe." You know. So this is the kind of gigs that I had, man. You know, with
That's absolutely brilliant.
me, Norman, and Ronnie, the three of us. That's how we stayed together.
So let's talk a little bit about Baker Harrison Young.
Baker Harrison Young, you know, they passed now, but they were more than just friends. They were brothers to me because they taught me. They taught me. I learned how to play. I learned how to record I learned how to record in the studio because I couldn't read music. And my first, you know, the first time I went into the studio, I came out with a big record. And not knowing anything about music was, I would say, 1965, I recorded Barbara Mason, Yes, I'm Ready. And they brought me into the studio. I couldn't read nothing. So Norman would sit in front of me and say, look, every time I nod, when I nod my head like this, you make a fill right in that spot. And that's how I learned. I didn't know nothing about 8, 16, 32 bars at that time. I was just a drummer that liked to play. You know, I was a big James Brown fan. You know, and I learned how to play with James Brown with a song called There Was a Time. That was my first record I ever learned to play drums on. With James Brown, There Was a Time, because it was an up-tempo record. So I did that for a long time with Norman, Ronnie. We in the studio playing. I cut a lot of records not knowing how to read, but they guided me. My partners guided me through everything. So I learned as I went. So then I started to be able to not only learn, but to be able to that's why I don't sound like anybody else, because I was creating as I was going. But then there came a time when Norman and Ronnie told me, say, look, Earl, you're going to have to learn how to read now because we're getting into some really hard music. We're getting ready to go and work with Tommy Bell. And Tommy Bell is
the legendary arranger.
He said, you have to know how to read.
By the Mighty Three catalog with Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff.
Okay.
I know every one of their records. Every one of them, man.
Fantastic. So Tommy Bell said, Norman said, look, you gotta know how to read because Tommy Bell writes out everything and you gotta play what he writes. So they took me in a room and they taught me how to read the codas, the DS, first and the second ending. And I stayed in there and I practiced so I learned how to read. I didn't have to really learn how to read notes. I needed to learn how to read signs. Once you learn to read signs, that's really all you need to learn how to do because nobody really goes in and play individual notes. Basically, most drummers learn the signs and the cues because if you most of the time horns and rhythms is all back to the same. So when I played a song, like my hardest song ever to play with Tommy was "People Make the World Go Round," because it has like time signatures, like from 5/4, 3/4, 2/4. Very hard song to play because you don't have no singing. You're just reading the chart. I had no idea how the song went. You're just playing.
If memory serves,
all the times.
If memory serves, was that the Stylistics?
Stylistics. Hard song to play. Once you got singing behind it, you can play it. But when you go in there, you have no idea. When I go into the studio, I never had any idea what I was going to record that day. There's no such thing as practice. When you go in there, you walk in there, and you sit down, and they say, "This is what we're recording today." I recorded with B.B. King or Wilson Pickett, Engelbert. I've recorded with some of the biggest artists, and I've been scared to death because these are legends. And I said, "Oh man, I hope I do well." I never go in the studio saying, I'm gonna kick this out. I'm gonna tear this up. Always going there saying, I hope I do well for this person. And that's how it has always went with me with Norman and Ronnie. I have never recorded outside of Sigma Sound Studio without Norman and Ronnie. They've always been with me. We've always played together, and we've always made records together. We've always been partners. That's why when they passed, it was so hard for me to ever record records again, because I've always recorded with these guys from South Soul, you know, with MFSB, and well, MFSB and South Soul was the same people. We just played Latin music more or less.
When you work with the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, did you also work with Teddy Pendergrass?
I did a couple things with Teddy. Some of the stuff we cut with Harold Melvin, like they use the tracks and give it to him. So you never really know whether you're recording with Harold Melvin or Teddy, because Teddy is Harold Melvin, the Blue Notes. So, you know, like Where's All My Friends? And they might take his track and give it to Teddy Pendergrass at the time, or one of the Blue Notes' old tracks and give it to Teddy. But I never dealt personally with Teddy, although we were great friends because he was a drummer. You know, we've always been.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was Harold Melvin's drummer at first. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, he started out playing drums. So him and I have always been friends since, you know, some of the fun days we had together, because we both had Rolls Royces at the time, and we used to ride up and down Broad Street, you know, just having some fun with each other. That didn't last too long, you know, because he had his thing happen to him. But
so yeah. Talk to me about the transition from Philly International, South Soul Records.
Well, MFSB, and there was never really anything called MFSB. MFSB was just a name. We never recorded together. We always recorded tracks. Then they would come in, add strings and add the horns, and they might add Vince on. We always cut
Vince Montana. When you say Vince Montana?
Yes. We cut the rhythm first, then overdub the vibes, because it's very hard to cut with a whole orchestra. You make a mistake and you got to go back over with 40-some people there. So we laid down the foundation, cut the tracks, then we brought everybody else in the overdub. That's how MFSB did. We only did about 3 gigs since it was all together. So they came up with a name, I guess, to stop from putting everybody's name on an album, giving them all credit. So they just gave us all one big name, which to me, I didn't particularly care for that, but I had no say so. So what we decided to do, to go to New York and work with the Carey brothers, mostly Ken Carey. He wanted to start up a company because they were already doing Latin music already. They were doing Latin stuff. So he wanted to do some R&B. So he said, well, look, I think they put together, that's why when they say South Soul, it's salsa music and soul music. That's how the name got there, salsa soul, South Soul. So we came in there and we started doing Double Exposure, and First Choice, and
Lita Holloway.
Yeah, Lita Holloway. So we wanted to break it loose to make more money because we was limited for scale. I mean, just imagine, back then scale was $135 for 3 hours. That's what you got paid. So you can cut 2 songs that can sell 1 million copies in 3 hours, and we only got $135. So we do an album is $900, you make $900 off an album. So we didn't make no money. We didn't really make any money in working in the studio. So you go to the union to pick up the union hall to pick up your money for $900. They take out taxes all out of that to pick your money up. at the end of the year, you file another tax for the money you make. So how much did you make? You worked all day long, you didn't make any money. So we start getting hip to that. We say we learned about publishing, we learned about writers' rights, we learned about production rights. So we said we're gonna. That's why we got Baker Harris and Young Productions together. Start recording our own stuff, start writing our own stuff because I could sing. We put our own group together. I had my own group, the Trammps. Like they had the Blue Notes. So we did the same thing. We went to South Soul, got our own orchestra. So the orchestra really wasn't Vince's orchestra, but he was the leader of the orchestra. The orchestra was like everybody, but since he did mostly the arrangements, the Latin stuff, so they called it Vince Montana's orchestra, which was cool because I love Vince, and we had great times working together.
Really good guy.
Beautiful time working together. He was really creative. Nobody could beat him when it comes down to that kind of Latin kind of.
Yeah.
Because, I started out with Vince. We used to have an organ trio. We worked Atlantic City as, just an organ and guitar, vibes, and drums. And
what year was that?
40 on and 20 off, man. You talking about work? 40 on and 20 off.
What year was that?
I don't really remember. I can't say the year, but
was that BC?
But it was all these things happening in between working. I was always busy doing something with the Trammps or with me and Vince, or I've always been busy all my life doing. I never settled with just doing one thing. I've always did either drums or sang.
Earl, what are you doing now?
Well, I still do the same thing now. I even do a little sessions every now and then. I do a session, but I don't do many sessions now because I don't like carrying drums around. And first of all, I don't carry drums at all anyway. And back then, Sigma Sound, they bought a pair of drums just for me, and they tuned them up whenever I come to work. I call it coming to work. Joe Taj, which is the best engineer in the world, he would tune them up for me. He knew exactly how I play. They were my drums. So when I come to work, all I had to do was sit down and play. I didn't have to tune up nothing because he would spend an hour on the drum because that was the most important thing in the studio.
So much of why I wanted to talk to you is, I'll be 64. And, including the jacket and the ruffle shirt and the mirrored ball, disco is a huge part of my life, Earl. My company is 37 years old. And I DJ'd in the 70s, and that's how I started, with no intention of ever being in this business. I just DJ'd for cash and to meet girls, when I was a teenager. And it's really morphed into this thing, where we do contemporary artists like Ariana Grande and, Beyonce. But my heart, my start, my love is the music that you helped make famous. And I'm not saying it for any reason other than this is absolutely true. So for me to have the privilege to talk to someone like you and to record this as archival, when nobody else, in my opinion, has really done that, is very important.
Thank you.
The DJs who played at these big festivals today to hundreds of thousands of people, basically DJs are the new rock stars, they have no idea, because of their age, where all of this started. I was born and raised in Manhattan, white, Jewish. My contemporaries in the 60s and early 70s were listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Leonard Skinner. And I know very little about rock music because that wasn't my thing. You said you were born to do this. I can tell you every song, in the Mighty Three catalog, because that's the musical fabric of my youth.
Wow.
The way that what you did is the musical fabric of your life. So to be involved in remixing or promoting or connecting with artists that are my heroes without my ever knowing who you were when I was 15. I just heard the records on the radio. So the OJs and the 3 Degrees and, the Intruders, Lolita Holloway, First Choice, MFSB, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, without Teddy Pendergrass, with Teddy Pendergrass, featuring Teddy Pendergrass, then Teddy Pendergrass alone. I'm a kid in a candy store talking to you. Me talking to you is like somebody meeting John Lennon. John Lennon, I understand the power of him, but I didn't connect with that music.
I understand. I appreciate that.
And that's just, I'm not blowing smoke. I'm just saying that's just the way it is, So in conclusion, right? You're going to be 81 years old, Earl. I got to tell you, you look fucking great. And Sylvia could probably tell you the same thing too.
Well, I'm trying to hang in there, man, so I can play some drum, keep playing.
I understand that. So I was fortunate to connect with you through Alan Rubens, who really is the innovator of, the Ultimate Disco Cruise, the shirt that you happen to be wearing, right?
My man.
So I know that you do these cruises on a regular basis when COVID will pass, of course. And I hear great things about these cruises. Tell me a little bit about them.
Ain't nothing like them cruises, man, because what happens is when you go on these cruises, people come there to do one thing, to have fun, get away from all the problems. And we always work the pool area. The pool area is where up top, you're up on, not the theater. We like the pool where people dance. They can get drunk if they want to and go and leave and come back and leave and come back. And we see people from all over the world. They come to me and say, look, I'm from Spain and I'm here and I'm so glad to meet you. You don't know how long I've been a big fan of yours for years. People from all over. The thing about the cruise is that you meet people from all over the world, not just one place. Places that I never been, probably never get to go. And they just come and they just want to talk to you and shake your hand. And sometimes they bring you little gifts. And it's nothing better than that, man. A little teddy bear or something, or, a little trinket here. I love it,
So who's better than Earl Young? Nobody.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do the best I can do. But I love the disco cruises, man. When they started that, nothing better, because we party all night. All night. When we leave our show, we go upstairs and dance, and my legs be killing me sometimes. But we'd be up there dancing, my wife and I. Boy, you can't beat it. I'm just happy that they got a cure or helping a cure from this virus so we can go back to work again.
It's coming soon. Earl, I want to thank you. I want to thank your wife, Sylvia, who's the camera woman for this project.
Yeah, here's my
Come on, Sylvia. Come on.
Here's my babe. 40 years. 40,
God bless you.
41 years.
God bless you both. I am so happy to speak to you, Earl. Not only did you make my day, my week, my month, and on this, the 43rd anniversary of Saturday Night Fever. Could it be any better than this? Life is good, Earl Young. Life is good. God bless you.
I really appreciate it because this helps my career. I always need help with my career. People forget
I'm going to do my best to get you involved in some of the projects we're doing. Even if you don't want to, you'll find out that I have a way of convincing people to get involved because I think it's important. The world right now, certainly over the past 4 years, without getting political, has been split apart. And my job, or at least I believe my job, in my little corner of the world is inclusion, not exclusion.
I heard that.
And music
Yeah.
is the one thing that absolutely brings us together. We don't have to know the lyric. We don't have to understand the language. But especially with disco music, it is the heartbeat. It's the heartbeat. And you said that the 4/4 tempo is the tempo at which we walk.
Absolutely.
And I'll suggest to you that the bass line is the actual heartbeat that makes it.
We look, they call me the heartbeat of Philadelphia, man.
There you go. We're going to leave it at that. Earl Young, thank you so much. Sylvia, thank you so much. You guys stay safe. We're going to talk soon, yeah?
Thank you.
God bless you. And thanks for being part of Promotion to be continued.